and welcome back to the 2021 Katie Bakes for Casey Back to School series. Today we are working on tortillas, homemade tortillas. They're really not scary, they're very easy to do, and I'm going to walk you through the whole process. Fun fact, Casey's nickname is Quesadilla. Like, he was literally a second old, they put him on my chest and I said, "Hi, Quesadilla." And that's been his nickname ever since. So these are very popular in the house, so much so that we call him Tortillas, because that's his nickname. And my older boys love them too. They don't care about getting the store-bought ones, they're fine with these. What makes these awesome is that you can prep them and keep them in the freezer, pop them out as you need, which is what I do. I make them once every week and a half, and if it's only really for one person in the house, you won't need them as much, but because I have 3 growing, ravenous boys who eat constantly, I whip through these. But they're really great to have for school, and since Casey is starting school in September, kindergarten is coming, I need to come up with some lunchbox ideas because he's never had lunch away from home. And I did come up with a whole bunch of things to show you in a little bit after we're done with the tortillas, and to give you an idea of what you can pack in your lunchbox for your littles or for yourself. Really good, clean, whole ingredients is the base of this, and that's it. Okay, so let's go over what's in here. The link for the recipe will be down below, and always on katiebakesforcasey.com with your safe substitutions. So in here I have oat flour. And the oat flour, if that's not something you have at home, just grind up oats and any leftover you have after measuring, keep in your freezer if you're not going to use them for an extended amount of time, because oils come out when you grind them and can go rancid. But if you're going to use it like within a month, it's fine at room temperature, just in a Ziploc bag or airtight bag. And I have also gluten-free flour blend. I always use King Arthur flour, measure for measure. That's what I use and what I test with. So I have that. Little bit of salt, like a half teaspoon, and teaspoon of sugar, and that's it. You can leave out the sugar if you want, but I like that little bit of sweetness just to slightly offset the flours. And that's it for our dry ingredients. Oh, I'm sorry, and also a little bit of baking powder just to help give it a tiny bit more rise, because we are dealing with gluten-free flours, which tend to be more to the dense side. In a small heavy bottom pot here, I have a little bit of shortening and some water, 2.5 ounces of shortening and about half a cup of water. And the shortening that you use is up to you. If you're fine with, say, Crisco or something like that, that's fine. Or if you're totally vegan or can't have soy, I love Spectrum palm shortening. That's been great. We've been using that for a few years now. You can also use coconut oil. That's a great option here too. I don't really love using vegan butter or butter here, mainly because when these get cool, they get a little bit harder. They don't stay as soft as regular tortillas because they're not store-bought, and they don't have all that extra junk in them. And the gluten-free flour does make it a little bit heavier, but I find that butter makes it too hard and crackly. So some vegan butters work better than others, but I do like using shortening or coconut oil in this. And that's really all of our ingredients are. Very, very simple. Some other optional things to use. You can either roll these out by hand with a rolling pin, which is perfectly fine, or if you're gonna get serious about these, I have a tortilla press. I think this cost me maybe $10 on Amazon, and I use it constantly. It's one of those things to me that are worth the investment, because I do so many of these for Case and for me and the boys, and I do other things with them too. We'll fry them up with some filling on the inside and make empanada kind of thing. Remember, I have a Puerto Rican husband, so there's a lot of meat being filled in pastry type things here. They love it. So this was an investment, and it has paid off in spades. I mean, I use it constantly. You need a small saute pan. You don't really need a big one here. If that's all you have, it's perfectly fine. But it's nice if it is non-stick and heavy bottom, because then you don't have to keep greasing the pan. A little cooling rack just to have them cooling and airing out. If you have anything flush against a surface when it's cooling, you get condensation on the bottom. And my scale. I love my kitchen scale. I'm a pastry chef. Everything we do is weights and measures. We don't really do volume, in cups and things like that. I do always put those measurements on KBFC.com, but a scale is where it's at. And this is gonna come in handy in a few minutes. And again, this is one of those things that I really think is worth the investment if you're gonna get a kitchen scale. I mean, you can get a $5 one at Walmart for real. And especially if you're doing gluten-free flours because it makes the substitutions easier. And I'm going to do another video where we have the substitutions and how to take out, or if you see a recipe that has wheat flour and you're like, you really want to try the gluten-free, I'm going to show you how to do it. But this really comes in handy because we're going to portion out our dough once we make them, so we get a good size yield for everything. All right, so let's get started. Jump right in. So I'm going to melt my shortening and water. Now the thing about melting shortening is you want to melt it on a relatively low flame. Got my hands in my pockets. Every girl loves a dress with pockets, right? Relatively low flame, because what happens to shortening if it gets hot? It's very dangerous. And remember a couple of times teaching at culinary school, I had a few students, I would tell them over and over and over, be careful with shortening, be careful with shortening. If we did anything on the stovetop and if it boiled over, it has definitely turned into the bigger flames. So you want to be really careful with that. So have that going on a low flame, let that melt. You can turn it up just a little bit higher, but only if you're being vigilant. You don't want it getting very, very hot. Also, it's very hot, your dough is going to be really hard to handle once you add to it. And this is a pretty quick moving recipe once you start, to tell you the truth. So again, in here I have my dry ingredients, and use a whisk. You don't have to sift it, just use a whisk to make sure everything gets thoroughly combined. Now, here's the thing about the water amount and the gluten-free flour blend. I start with a 1/2 cup of water, and this is sort of an in general because different flour blends that you're going to use absorb and have different densities, so they're going to absorb moisture differently. Okay, so when I tested with this over and over, and oat flour soaks up a lot of moisture too, but you want to be careful because if you add too much water from the beginning, then you have to keep throwing in more flour to absorb, and then it becomes super dense and gummy. But on the flip side, if you add too little water from the start, then you're going to have a very dry dough. And as this sits for a few minutes, it continues to absorb the moisture, the flour and the oats will. So it's kind of a by feel sort of thing, and I'm going to show you, and you'll see what the texture is supposed to look like. So we're getting there. Just move it around a little bit because you can have those kind of icebergs of the shortening in there. So that, again, is something to be aware of. And we do have our heavy bottom pan ready to go. It's nice when these are non-stick because then you don't have to keep greasing the pan for more. I'm going to do a few when we start, when the dough is ready. Not the whole thing, it'll just take a long time, but I'm going to show you how to portion it out and everything like that. So again, you can use a rolling pin to roll these out when you're ready. The yield is about, I always get 9 tortillas. You can certainly double it if you want to, and I'm getting 9 tortillas at about 2 ounces per tortilla. When I measure them out, you'll see later. And they'll make about a 4.5 inch wide tortilla. So not huge, but they're a perfect size to do and use what we need. As a matter of fact, let's take a look at what they're going to look like when they're done. These are our tortillas. Aren't they the cutest things ever? And having them stacked up, but they're about 4 inches. Yes, they are smaller than the diameter of the press, but that's because I choose to make them a little bit smaller. You can make them a little bigger. You absolutely can. I just like getting a nice even yield doing them at that. And again, your flour will depend on the yield that you're going to get. That's why I like using a scale, because you can get yourself in a groove and say, okay, I know every time I make this, this is what I'm using and this is how much I'm getting out of it. So some of the guesswork is taken out, okay? So this is at the point where we want to. It's okay if some of the shortening still isn't totally melted. Just move it around a little bit because it will get melted once you move it around. There's so much residual heat in there. But again, you don't want this boiling. You want it just melted on a low flame, okay? And shortening is nice because it gives it that flexibility that we want in the tortilla. And this is just about ready, all right? Again, you want everything waiting for you. You don't want anything, I'm sorry, let me say that again. You want everything done, ready, waiting. You don't want to be waiting on anything, as we call it in professional kitchens, mise en place. Everything in its place. That means you read your recipe twice, you turn on your oven, you make sure you have the correct pans. So you are set, ready to go. You're not running around like, oh no, I forgot this. And then it throws everything off, especially with baking, okay? So that's why we had our flour ready to go, our equipment ready to go. And let's get the tortillas rolling. So here's our dry ingredients. We're going to add the water shortening mixture. scrape that all out. Okay, that's fine. And we're just gonna gently blend that. And you're making a dough that's gonna be soft and pliable. And like I said, as it sits, it's going to absorb the moisture. So you have to keep your eye on it to see, do I need a little bit more or a little bit less right from the beginning? Because once it starts to absorb the moisture, you're really, really in trouble if you start adding it then, because it won't blend in properly. Just looking at this, I see I need a hair more water. So I started with a half cup. I'm adding just a little bit, and you don't want it loose, okay? You don't want it too wet. But again, you don't want it dry. It's gonna come together. Okay. And hey, this is yours. Don't be afraid to get in there and bring it together with your hands and start to feel it. If there's some dry patches in there, and it doesn't feel like it's totally coming together, add a touch more water, which is what I'm gonna do here. Because if you don't add enough water, like I said, as it sits, it absorbs, and you're gonna have very, very dry, dense, heavy tortillas. And you don't want that. Okay, so bring this all together. It's coming together nicely. And when you pick up the dough, even though your hands are a little bit shiny, that's just from the shortening, it's gonna come together and hold together in a nice little ball. And again, teeny bit more. Shockingly, it's dry here in New York today. We had a lot of humid, rainy weather early this week, which will always affect dough and moisture and sugar, always when there's humidity in the air. So when you're making bread in the summer, a lot of times you may not need as much water as the recipe calls for, or pie dough or something, because your flour is absorbing moisture from the air, okay? It's called hygroscopic. Sugar is that way too, and salt. They absorb all the moisture around. That's why you should never store like candies and caramels and stuff in the refrigerator, because it absorbs all the moisture. All right, we're all set. We got our dough ready to go here. So now that I have that, I'm going to get my scale ready. And I'm gonna start portioning these out into 2-ounce balls. I'm gonna get this all set up. Parchment paper, my love, my life, parchment paper. Okay, so I have my scale on. Now this will do grams and it will do ounces and pounds. So I have measurements for everything on the recipe. And this is going to give me 9 for my yield. So we're gonna get, so there's one right there. And what you can also do with these at this point, if you don't feel like cooking them all right now, you don't have to. You can take them all and layer them. Once you get the balls like this, you can flatten them out and layer these and put them in the freezer. So you're ready to rock and roll at any given time. You just take them out, you let them defrost. So you could do a lot of prepping. So say you do a double batch. You can bake half of them, not bake, well, you could fry half of them one day and then fry the other half, freeze the other half of the dough in the rounds after you flatten them out. And then that's double the work. That's less work that you have to do next time. Think ahead. Work smarter, not harder. And especially the whole point of this back to school series is getting us prepared for the busyness that comes with back to school. There's homework, there's sports, there's after school activities. Those of us who work, you're working all day, you're coming home, you want things ready. And when you have food allergy kids, you always have to be one step ahead of the game, because you can't just run to the store sometimes and grab something. It's never really that easy. I know for us it's not. So here we are, look, told you, gonna get my 9 out of this. See how nice and clean it scrapes up from the bowl? Nothing left, nice and easy. And I got perfect 9 at 2 ounces each, love it. Okay, so we can get these out of the way. Like I said, I'm gonna do a few to start, and I won't do all the rest, I won't bore you with it, but while we're getting our tortilla press out and start pressing them, I'm going to start warming up my pan. About medium heat. You don't need it too high, because if you do, you're just gonna burn the tortilla. And you want to evaporate some of the moisture that's on the inside without totally browning everything that's on the outside. That's kind of the idea of like searing meat. Like if you just throw the meat on a crazy hot grill, what's going to happen is the outside is going to crust up and firm up and get dark, but the inside won't be cooked as much. Or if you put something in the oven that's too high, your cake, the outside is going to cook, the inside is going to stay very loose and wet. So a medium flame, especially when you have a nice non-stick dark pan. Remember, dark is going to absorb the the heat. So it's going to hold on to that heat, and the longer it stays on, the hotter it's going to get, So you don't want to throw it into a cold pan, but you want a nice moderate temperature all the way around. You don't want to have your flame up super high like this, licking around the whole side. It's too hot, okay? Nice and moderate. Keep it like that. So let's get our scale out of the way, and I'm going to show you how we work with this tortilla press right here, okay? So I got familiar with this. I worked at a country club for a few summers, and they did a ton of theme nights. So they always had a lot of Mexican night, but they did homemade tortillas, no buying them. So I was, they were like, well, tortillas are a dough. You're the pastry chef, so I guess you should make them. All right, therefore thousands of tortillas I've now made. So I got very familiar with this, and they look intimidating. They're the easiest thing in the world to use. So I have a little bit of water left over, and I'm going to put just a tiny bit on the bottom here, and I'm going to show you this little trick that I learned working there. Okay, just a little bit of water for a real simple reason, you'll see. And again, it's okay that your pan is heating up. Don't get nervous. Nothing's happening to it over there. Just keeping a nice moderate temperature. And I'm going to take 2 pieces of plastic and put them, and that water helps to make that plastic stick. And I'll put it right down here. And again, you could absolutely do this with a rolling pin. There's no reason why you can't. Because I make these so much, I love doing this, and I think it's a lot easier. Also, very important, keep your balls here covered, okay? Keep your little tortilla dough balls covered. Why? If they sit and they're exposed to air, they're going to start drying out, and they're going to get a crust on them, and it's going to get harder to work with. All right, so start with the one that you did first. That's the one that's been exposed the most, all right? If you have to redo the little ball, do that. You're going to put that right in the middle of the bottom part here, okay? Close your lid. That's going to go like this. Crank that down, and when you open it back up, of course this one broke, why wouldn't it? You just patch it together just like that. Too easy. It's okay. Mistakes happen. It's just how we work with the mistake, right? And there you go. You're going to pick up your plastic just like that. Pop your plastic back down and slap it right on your hot saute pan, okay? And that's gonna start cooking underneath. Now, we're gonna know when it's ready to flip, start getting a little tiny bubble in them, and you don't want the outsides too dark. Again, it's not cooking on the inside, but it's getting too dark on the outside. So it's something to keep an eye out for, is the temperature in there. And you're gonna hear a tiny little bit of sizzling, and that's because the shortening in there is actually helping it to be nonstick and to come out. And while you're waiting, we can put in another dough ball. And again, that could have cracked as well because I didn't cover this with plastic. I was sitting here yapping away and I forgot to cover it with the plastic. So once it starts getting that crust, that's another reason why it could crack. Another reason it could crack too is if you press too hard on the crank and make it thinner than it wants to be. If you had a bigger dough ball here, then you can crank it a little bit harder because the pressure is going to make it spread out. So let's do that. Get in between here. And there you go. There's our tortilla. So, are we getting our little bubbles yet? Not yet. Turn up temperature. So now at this point, if you wanted to, so I'm showing why we have some parchment paper here. You can take these as you're making them, right? And layer them up to put them in the freezer to fry at a later time. So they're ready to go. Off. See how easy that is? Can you see from there? Okay. And pile these up. Do another one. Oh, we're getting ready to flip. Getting ready to flip. Coming soon. Once you start getting into the groove of these two, you're going to see that it's going to start going faster. It's almost like seasoning the pan, like the first pancake doesn't always come out right. It's the same sort of thing with the tortillas. So you're going to start getting into the groove of it. Okay? So, put these over here. And these I'm going to put in the freezer to fry it another time because I have made quite a few tortillas over the past few days. Okay. All right, and then from there, that's how you would just pop them in the freezer. We'll wrap those up. Okay, let's see how we're doing here. Starting to get a little bit of bubbles. Okay, a little bit of bubbles are starting to come through. So what are we gonna do? Just flip it over. And you're gonna hear that sizzle on the other side because that's the sound of the shortening helping the tortilla to cook. Okay. Now, this happens sometimes when people get really, really dry. They forget to cover it. Like, oh gosh, what am I gonna do now? Easy fix. Just wet your hands a little bit, okay? Just a little bit. And you can kind of get a little bit of moisture back in there without making it too wet through the whole dough. You don't want to take that whole pile of dough and throw it back into a bowl because it's not going to work. But if you get your hands a little bit wet and sort of rework that back in there, that'll work. Get your fingers in between there. There we go. All right, let's see. And I have like asbestos hands for working in a kitchen, so while I'm touching hot things that, and there we go. There's our tortilla ready to come out. Our first one there, and we have it on the rack to cool. Again, having a cooling rack is so important depending on, anything you're making out of the oven or here, because if something was just flat on the surface like this, your pan or whatever, condensation builds up and it makes things soggy and it's not going to cool properly. So this is really the way you want to go, is having it on a rack, okay? Pick that up and we're going to slap another one down there. All you have to do is lay that back down. If it's not staying flat for you, just go back to what we did before with that little bit of water. And it's going to flip up and down. That's fine. Just stretch it back out. Now, can you do these without oat flour? You can. And I do have proportions for those. I find though that they are a bit denser and you're going to have to adjust the hydration, meaning the water. You're definitely going to have to add a little bit more because you're going to have the gluten-free flour blends that are very dense and very heavy. Can you use regular wheat flour? Absolutely, of course you can. All my recipes are done that you can substitute for your safe needs. So if you can't have, soy, then you don't use regular shortening, but you can have wheat, then you use regular wheat flour. That's fine. That's why I test every recipe to be used in all possibilities, because we all have different allergy sets. And even if you don't have allergies and you stumble across this video and you want to try them out, that's great. Okay. So starting to heat up a little bit here. When it's moving around freely, independently, you're starting to get to that good point, okay? So I'm going to do one more here, just to show you again. Put that crank down. There you go. You're going to slide your hands under the plastic. And if you're putting them in the freezer, there we go. And put them aside. Now, just for time's sake, I'm not going to do all these, but I'm going to show you how to get them stacked up for the freezer once you're done. So if you're going to put these in the freezer for another time, if you've seen my other video, oh wait, we're going to flip. There we go. So you get a nice little browning on that side. If you've seen any of my other videos, especially the food videos, you'll see that I reuse my plastic bags all the time. Because why? These cost a lot of money, right? And your freezer is your best friend, especially when you are cooking or baking for anyone that has allergies, because you can just pop in there any minute you need something. So you see this one says final batch of something I tested, and this one has gluten-free batch too. So these were other batches of tortillas that I was working with. So what we can do here, I love plastic wrap. You always want to have them wrapped up tightly because freezer burn will be your worst enemy at the end of it. So just wrap them up nice and tight with the parchment paper in between, because once you're defrosting, this is what's going to help them not stick to each other, right? And freezer bags. If you're going to go in the freezer, splurge a little bit and buy the freezer bags. Nice and tight, nice and tight. Get all that air out. And then label it from there, okay? But make sure you put cooked or uncooked, because it could definitely make a difference. I defrosted the wrong ones at the wrong time. And pop it right in there. They're ready to go. Always defrost in the fridge as well, okay? Let's see how we look here. Let's go back. Beautiful. And There we go. We have our tortillas ready to go. Nice. I'm going to turn that off. And I'll put these tortillas aside for another time. So now you have all your tortillas done, right? And you want to get these stacks up for the freezer as well to be able to come and go. So just like I did here with my cut pieces of parchment, wax paper works perfectly fine as well. And in between. So see how nice these came out? Nice and round, a little bit of browning, beautiful. Let me separate those with our parchment paper. You're going to do the same thing like you did with the other ones, except this time you're going to label them that they are cut. Take them out as you need them, warm them up in the microwave for about 20 seconds, and that's going to make them pliable again, even if they're frozen. Again, I prefer to defrost in the refrigerator, but still, these will need a little bit, and any fresh tortilla that you would try that's the same thing, they do crack a little bit. So if you put them in the microwave or even warm them up with a warm paper towel on top, even better to give it a little more moisture, or gently warm in the pan like we just used, very, very gently. You don't want to overcook, and you don't want to take more moisture out of it because that'll make it even drier. But that's 1, 2, 3. You take it right out, and they're ready to go. Always at the ready. So here's some of the things that I have made for Casey and for lunch boxes in the future with our tortillas. Let's take a look. Well, the air conditioner killed our avocado over here, but we have nice little quesadilla made with safe cheese. What cheese do we use? I'm going to show you. I've been asked this question before. And this is cheese that I'm a big fan of. Violife. Again, this is not a sponsor. I'm not getting paid. I'm just saying what we use. Violife, but be careful. Because if you do manage a seed allergy like we do, there are a couple of the Violife shreds that have ground sunflower seeds in them, and I found that out the hard way. I believe it's the Colby Jack shreds, but these and the mozzarella, those are safe. So I use this. And this is awesome that they have, just like cream cheese. Casey loves this. And it is just like cream cheese. This is coconut based. If you can have soy, then you can get tofutti and use those blends. We can't really use Daya. They have pea protein in them, so that's not an option for us for cheese. But whatever your safe cheese option is, if dairy is okay for you, then go with that, absolutely. So here's a quesadilla made with our tortilla folded in half with some of the shreds here, some safe salsa. We could actually use Tostitos brand salsa. I trust Frito-Lay labeling, and we haven't had an issue with it yet. A little pizza here again. My air conditioner made it a little bit cold, but we have the Violife mozzarella shreds that I used. I used actually the last of the bag, so that's why I don't have the bag to show you. Turkey pepperoni. Casey has F-pies to beef and pork, so we can't use regular pepperoni. But this is Applegate turkey pepperoni, mustard-free, because he does have a mustard allergy, all seeds. And some homemade sauce. I'm a good Italian girl. I make my sauce, got tomatoes in my yard. But some safe brands when I don't want to make any, Rao's. Love Rao's. Rao's is great, and it tastes really, really authentic. And some kids prefer something like Muir Glen or Tudoroso because it's a little bit sweeter. What I like about those brands, both of them, pure, clear, crystal clear labeling of what's in it and what's not in it. And it does have a little bit of a sweeter taste, like I said, which can appeal to some kids. Roll-ups. These are so much fun for the lunchbox. So ham and tomato here with the cream cheese, And Casey can't have ham, but I'll be gobbling those up later. But he does like this. I roll them up with some cucumber and turkey. He can have Applegate turkey, and he can have Oscar Mayer turkey. Again, good, clear label. I believe Oscar Mayer is Heinz Kraft, and I like their labeling. And loves that, and loves his fruit on the side. So this is great for the lunchbox. Make the little roll and pop it in the fridge the night before, because some of that moisture helps it to bind a little bit, and you could even leave like a little cigar that they can munch on like that, or cut it into rolls, like a little kind of sushi roll. And last but not least, have your snack. Have a sweet snack. Tortilla with your safe nut butter alternative. And I think this is one of the problems with the allergy community. Everyone's always like fighting about who has the better allergy, the worst allergy, Well, I have a peanut allergy and I have a tree nut allergy. Listen, there's allergies to manage. They're all terrible and they all have serious consequence. So, if someone says that they can have peanut butter, okay, great, but they also can't have like a million other things, or someone has almond butter, they can have a million things. So, everyone needs to be respectful of other people's allergies. And Casey can have peanut butter. It's one of his few safe proteins. So I'm not going to send him to school with peanut butter if he's not allowed to have it in the classroom. That's fine. So this is actually wow butter because he likes wow butter as well. He just passed the soy challenge, so he can now have that. So we like wow butter and Don't Go Nuts bars and things like that. So those are good alternatives. So this one is wow butter with some banana and a little bit of fruit on top. A little drizzle of honey is always good on top of there, and that's great to pack in their lunch boxes as well. So if your child can have almond butter and they're allowed to have it in school, awesome. Or cashew butter or anything. Just it's another really nice alternative. It's a great on the go snack because it's not perishable. So in this kind of weather, you go to the beach, these tortillas are great. They stay nice and soft, and you have that good protein hit there, whatever safe butter your child can have. Some people even use, sunflower butter, like the scariest thing in the world for us. Casey's first anaphylaxis was to sunflower butter and flax, so we can't go near that with a 10-foot pole. But if sunflower butter is safe for you, awesome. I'm happy you have an alternative, and that's what we need to do. Celebrate and say, that's awesome, you can have that, and support everyone's allergies because we're all in this crappy boat together, and let's help each other. Figure it out. Help give other alternatives to other people. So that was our tortillas for today. I hope you like it, and I hope you like and subscribe because I'm coming up with more videos all the time. There's always recipes on KBFC.com, on my Instagram page and Facebook. Sometimes I have recipes on Instagram that aren't on the website yet if it's a quickie, and something to find for everyone. I try and have substitutions for every single top allergen, and some paleo recipes, throw in some grain-free, so check it out. Please feel free to always send me questions. It's what I'm here for, and this is what I love to do. So welcome back to school. It's coming real soon, and those of you who have started school in the hotter western states, good luck and have a successful year, and I will see you soon. Take care, everybody. Bye.